My parents gave me a trip for my 18th birthday, but when I returned, the house was empty. They told me I was old enough to live on my own. When I turned 18, my parents gave me what seemed like an incredible birthday gift, a weekend getaway with all expenses paid. It wasn't anything luxurious, just a trip to a nearby city, staying in a hotel. At that moment, I felt grateful. It felt like a final celebration of my childhood before stepping into adulthood. I had no reason to suspect that something was wrong. But when I returned home, everything was gone. The furniture, the clothes, all my belongings had vanished. My key didn't work, and there was a "for sale" sign out front. I stood there, wondering what had happened. I had only been gone for a few days. The first thought I had was that maybe I had gone to the wrong address. But no, the address was correct. I was standing in front of the home where I had been living. I tried calling my parents, but their numbers were disconnected. I had nothing on me but a weekend bag of clothes and a phone that was running low on battery. Eventually, I managed to contact an aunt who explained everything that had happened. My parents had planned this for months. They sold the house, took everything they wanted, and left me behind. They moved to another state without leaving an address. When I eventually tracked them down through distant relatives, guess what they said? That they had fulfilled their duty raising me for 18 years, and now it was my turn to be an adult. They treated it like it was normal to leave without telling me anything. To them, I was legally an adult, so I had to figure it out all by myself. I was homeless, alone, with no savings, no support network, nothing, abandoned overnight. The least they could have done was let me know beforehand. I wasn't ungrateful or lazy. I had part-time jobs to help out at home. I was diligent in school. I did my chores, and I always did my part to be a good daughter. I never took things for granted and was always thankful. I wasn't spoiled. I didn't expect them to support me. I was ready to work and move out as soon as I turned 18. How hard would it have been to just tell me? It disturbed me deeply how they thought they were in the right, acting like I was the ungrateful one for questioning their decisions. They were so cruel, but they no longer cared because they had moved away. It took me years to crawl out of the hole they had thrown me into. I worked several jobs, slept on friends' sofas, and many times in my car when I had nowhere to go. Despite everything, I managed to attend university, and though it took me longer than others, I did my best with the hand I was dealt. A life that they never thought I could achieve. Now I'm 36 years old, happily married to my wonderful husband Samuel. We have a beautiful 1-year-old son, Oliver, and I have a career that lets me provide a roof over my head. I got to this point without my parents' help, or I would say I got here in spite of them. Then, out of the blue, my mother contacts me after 18 years of silence, trying to act like nothing had happened. Just a casual message asking how I was after all this time, alongside another message saying that she and my father would love to meet their grandson. Even though they acted normal, like reconnecting with an old friend, they were the same ones who had abandoned me exactly 18 years ago. I didn't respond because, well, I don't think they deserve a response, and I have nothing to say to them. They want to see my child, the one they refer to as their grandson, but I don't believe they are his grandparents. They're just the people who lived with me until I turned 18, because that's what the law required. I told Samuel about the message, and he got furious for me. He said I didn't owe them anything. He believes they shouldn't see our son, and there's nothing beneficial about them being in his life. If you're a parent, you'll understand. My parents certainly never were. You don't want your children around unpleasant people who might harm them. So, this is my story of horrible parents and their attempt to return to my life. Update 1. I thought that would be it after all. A normal person understands indirect messages like, I don't care. But narcissists and entitled people like my parents are anything but normal. They see years of silence from me as an open invitation to come back when they feel like it. It doesn't work that way, unless your brain operates like that of a Karen or a Kevin. Samuel and I decided not to respond, not even to say no, because they don't deserve that, and ignoring them should have been enough as a response. But it wasn't for them. They took it as an invitation to intrude back into my life without consent. They kept messaging me. At first, it was just my mother texting, casual and suspiciously sweet messages. She acted like she had simply lost touch for a while. Not like she and my father had abandoned me at 18 with nothing. She asked how I was, how my husband was, and was overly excited to become a grandmother. She sent me old baby pictures of myself, probably trying to appeal to my emotions. I left those unread. Then the messages came more frequently. The tone shifted from casual to confused. She wanted to know why I wasn't responding and repeated things like, "We just want to see our grandson. You can't ignore your own family forever." After a few days, messages from my father started coming in. He had no interest in pretending to be sweet. From the first message, he told me I was being immature and that whatever upset me had happened a long time ago, that it was time to get over it. The texts and calls became constant. Each time I ignored one, another followed, and if I blocked a number, they'd use a new one. Then one day, it escalated to a direct threat. My mother's last message said that if I didn't let them see their grandson, they would have no choice but to take action. According to them, they had rights as grandparents and were going to explore all legal options to make those rights known to me. Like it was as simple as that. I could either let them see my son, or if not, they would take the hard way. But for me, politeness could wait. I didn't respond to that either, because it was absurd. They came back worse. They messaged me from a different number, saying they would call Child Protective Services. They thought that not letting their grandson see his grandparents was some form of abuse. It made me laugh with disbelief that they were questioning abuse after what they did. Perhaps it wouldn't be considered child abuse since I had already turned 18, but it wasn't like they had any idea what being good parents looked like. Samuel flipped out when I showed him the message. He said that if they dared to make a false report or even try to sue us for anything, it wouldn't end well for them at all. I don't think it's wrong to mistreat parents like them. They have no rights whatsoever, especially not to write me that nonsense. I know there's no real case with Child Protective Services. I mean, we are good parents, Oliver is safe, loved, and well cared for. But the very fact that they made that threat tells me all I need to know. I don't know what their end goal is. Maybe they think they can intimidate me into compliance. Perhaps they expect me to panic and let them back in just to avoid trouble. Maybe they're just angry because I refuse to pretend the past never happened. But here's the thing. I'm not 18 anymore, and I don't need them in my life. They made sure to teach me a lesson when they left me homeless. Now it's their turn to face the consequences. I survived without them and built a life without them. They are no longer needed for anything. Perhaps they realized that abandoning me to live their lives would have repercussions, and now they want me back in theirs because theirs is empty. Well, it could always be emptier if they decide to poke the hive. We're documenting everything, every message and every voicemail. If they want to play dirty, so be it, but they have no idea who they're messing with. Update 2. A few weeks ago, they bombarded me with messages and threats, trying to guilt me into letting them see Oliver. Now they've found where we live. After their threat to contact social services, Samuel and I decided to consult with a lawyer. We needed to know what our rights were and make sure we were protected. In case they really tried something, we even stopped answering unknown numbers, fearing they might try reaching out by other means. The lawyer reassured us they have no legal basis. Grandparent rights only apply in extreme cases, usually when a previous relationship has been established with a child. My parents haven't been in my life since I was a teenager, and certainly not in Oliver's. Even so, the lawyer recommended we stay alert. There are people who, when they realize they can't win through legal means, try to win through intimidation. And that's exactly what happened. A few days ago, they showed up at our house. I was alone with Oliver at the time while Samuel was at work. Since I work from home, it was just the two of us. I had just laid Oliver down for his nap when I heard banging on the door. At first, I thought it was a delivery, but then the knocks became louder and more persistent. I looked through the peephole, and it was the most horrible parents in the world. We had never given them our address. How did they find us? Had they hired someone? Traced old documents? I don't know, and at that moment it honestly didn't matter because the only important thing was that they were there, and they didn't arrive empty-handed. My mother was holding a gift bag, probably for Oliver, a manipulation attempt for pretending to be caring grandparents. My father stood behind her, arms crossed, already looking annoyed because I wasn't opening the door. I didn't open the door or even respond, though it wasn't hard to guess someone was home with a car parked outside. My mother's voice came through the door, sickly sweet, saying they just wanted to talk and had come from far away to see their grandson and that I should be reasonable. I didn't respond, standing there with the phone in hand trying to decide what to do. That was when her tone changed. The sweetness vanished. She started demanding to be let in, and soon enough, it turned into shouting. They had wasted their time getting there, and they wouldn't leave without spending some time inside. My father chimed in, shouting that the price of gas wasn't good right now, and they hated wasting time. Then they began banging on the door. If the door wasn't a bit sturdier, they might have knocked it down. I grabbed Oliver from his crib, frightened he would wake up and start crying, which would only encourage them more. If they did happen to get in, I wanted to run and lock myself in a room while waiting for the police, whom I called after I had Oliver in my arms. Then I called Samuel immediately, and when he answered, I whispered what was going on. He was furious. He told me to lock everything and stay away from the windows, and that if they didn't leave immediately, I needed to call the police again. I told him I already had. My mother's voice changed again, suddenly calm as if she hadn't just been shouting seconds before. She said they would give me one last chance to do the right thing and let them in, claiming that if I didn't, I would regret it. I yelled through the door that the police were on their way and that if they didn't leave right now, I wasn't taking back my report. They hesitated for a moment and finally left, but not without leaving their mark. My father kicked over one of our flower pots on the porch, smashing it on the ground. Samuel arrived shortly after and wanted to storm out to confront them, but I begged him not to. We had to be smart. That very night, we made a decision. We packed our things and drove directly to my in-laws' house. We weren't safe there. If they had found us once, they could do it again. Now that they had crossed the line into outright harassment, we were unsure of what their next move would be. Our first step was to file a police report and talk to our lawyer about a restraining order. Samuel considered getting a gun, but I don't feel comfortable with one in the house. Let's hope the legal route is enough and we won't have to take it that far. Update 3. It's been a week since we left our home to stay with my in-laws, and here feels safer, at least as safe as I can considering the situation. There are more people in the house, and I'm never alone. My husband's family has been incredibly supportive during this situation, and honestly, having my brother-in-law around adds an extra layer of protection that my father won't want to test. This guy doesn't just look tough. He literally looks like he walked off a private security team for a celebrity. If my parents even think about showing up here, they will end up with a serious beating. But my parents haven't stopped trying through other means. They are still harassing us, which is good for our case. They've tried everything, calling from different numbers, sending emails, and even getting people I don't know who shouldn't be involved in this to call me. Now I finally understand why they were so desperate to meet my son. At first, I thought it was just the typical entitlement, believing they could waltz back into my life and get what they wanted. But it turns out to be something even more disgusting. I learned through a cousin that around the same time my parents discovered I had a child, one of my aunts welcomed a newborn granddaughter. That's when it all clicked in place. I had forgotten how obsessed my family was with being first. First child, first grandchild, first grandson. It all became a competition, and now there was an opportunity to beat my aunt. They didn't want to meet Oliver because they cared about family. They wanted to showcase him as a trophy, making sure everyone in the extended family knew they had the first grandson. Not just a grandson in general, but a boy. I can perfectly imagine the kind of sick pride they were after, how my mother would flaunt and gloat at family gatherings, rubbing my aunt's face in that she had a grandson first. My father would strut around like having a grandson made him superior. That's why they're so desperate to do what they did, because narcissistic people do these things when they think they're in the right. I was furious, and the more I thought about it, the more old memories came flooding back. Memories I didn't share because I thought that their abandoning me was enough to show what kind of parents they were. I remember being a child growing up in a house where I always felt I had been born with the wrong gender from my parents. I was the third granddaughter, but more importantly, I was a girl. And even back then, I could feel the disappointment. My parents were never openly cruel about it, but they didn't make me feel especially valued either. They always compared me to my older cousin, who was the first in the family. He was treated like royalty. My family celebrated every one of his achievements like a national event. His first steps brought the family together, and when he started school, they called the entire family to tell everyone how well he was doing. I was just another girl, like my cousin. I remember once overhearing my mother talk to one of her sisters about how she had hoped to have a boy when she was pregnant with me. Suddenly, many things started to make sense. When they abandoned me at 18, when they sold the house and left me with nothing. I spent years trying to understand why. Yes, they are bad people and selfish, but I was trying to get to the bottom of it. But there's not much to say. They just abandoned me when they could, when it was legally in force, and that's all there was to it. It was all because I was a girl. And yet here I am nearly 2 decades later, and this terrible tradition continues to haunt me, and worse, now it's directed at my son. But my son won't be a part of this tradition. We will make sure of it. Update: 4 months have passed since this nightmare began. It's no longer just about the harassment charges, which alone would have been stressful enough, but my parents decided to take it even further. They are trying to fight for grandparent rights over my son. I probably shouldn't be surprised given how arrogant they are. It was probably inevitable, but knowing it doesn't make it any less exhausting. My husband and I are mentally and emotionally drained. These last few months have been an endless cycle of meetings with lawyers and paperwork, ensuring my parents couldn't get near us. If you're thinking, well, now they'll leave this topic alone and we can all get back to our lives, they do something new. At this point, we don't even live in our own home anymore. We are still staying with my in-laws for safety, and while I am incredibly grateful to them, I miss having my own space. I miss our old life with Samuel before my parents barged in on it. But we have to do this because we weren't granted the restraining order against my parents. According to the law, everything is very complicated with them still seeking grandparent rights. I hate that Oliver's early years are being overshadowed by this mess. I want to enjoy watching him grow without worrying if my toxic parents will pull some craziness. I don't want to live in constant paranoia, afraid they will find another way to invade our lives. We're also suing them for harassment at the same time, but it's nothing short of a huge mush of never-ending legal actions. The idea was making it clear to them we wouldn't be intimidated by them. But instead, they've stopped physically confronting us and switched to doing it through legal means. My parents argue that I've never wanted to let them back into my life, suggesting I'm doing the same to my son, that they were loving parents for 18 years. They can't believe I'd be this way with them. It's insane, but that's what they are using against me to wear me down. I don't think their winning strategy should be winning at this point. They just want to wear me out and have me say, okay, fine, let them see him. And it seems to be working, except for the fact that while we are exhausted by this, we still have the energy to keep fighting. My fuel is that I hate them for abandoning me and for what they're doing now. So with that, I'm keeping the fight alive. Two can play the game of wearing each other out, and when I wear them down, I will go further. Update 5. It's been almost 2 years since this nightmare began, and I can finally say that we are free. We won all the cases. After all the stress, the threats, and total exhaustion of fighting for our peace, we finally put an end to my parents' relentless attempts to bull their way back into our lives. The fight for grandparent rights against us has been dismissed and filed away, while our harassment case went in our favor. They were ordered to pay nearly $1,000, a hefty price for a broken flower pot. But even though we won, Samuel and I decided we couldn't take further risks. A month ago, we packed up and left the country. Now we live abroad, and honestly, it still feels unreal. We settled in my mother-in-law's homeland, and luckily, the transition has been relatively smooth. Samuel was lucky enough to be reassigned within his own company, and even received some relocation assistance, which was a big boost. As for my in-laws, they decided to come with us since they had already planned to retire here. While it's been a huge change, we're adjusting well for now. About my parents? The last I heard, they are still complaining. Yes, they have toned down their direct attacks, probably because they know they can't afford more legal trouble, but that doesn't mean they've completely stopped portraying themselves as victims. They will never find us again. Update 6. Everything has been very quiet with my parents. They haven't been able to find us where we live, and I must admit I have enjoyed this more than I expected initially. We live in a safer neighborhood than the one we had before, and I am not just talking about safety from my parents, but in general. So this change has turned out very positive. I'm sorry to start with the positive and then move on to the negatives, because I know that might put you in a worse mood than had I begun here and saved the positives for the end. But this is only negative if you're my parents, because for the rest of us, including Samuel and myself, there have been pretty positive things. Remember I told you that my parents loved competing against family to be the first? Well, they lost the competition to have the first grandson, so my aunt, who was just as bad or maybe worse than them, didn't miss the opportunity to gloat during a family gathering. She wouldn't stop showcasing her grandson over and over, asking about theirs. This went on for hours until my mother unexpectedly slapped my aunt. Still holding the baby, my cousin and her husband had to intervene because she attacked while holding the baby. A brawl broke out with my father jumping in and fighting with my cousin's husband. The gathering ended shortly when the police arrived and arrested both her husband and my father. Charges were also brought against my mother. Since then, my parents haven't been invited to any family gatherings and have had to pay my aunt $800 for the slap and $24,400 to the baby's parents. My cousin told me all this much later because she didn't know if I wanted to hear things concerning my parents given our history. But I told her she was crazy if she thought I wouldn't want to hear news like that. Plus, it's been quiet, but it's utterly boring. I haven't gotten wind of stuff like that. My parents no longer have to compete within the family, and I don't have to worry about them using my son as leverage in their competition, as they no longer have a family.